Hello. I can now introduce our next set of videos which describe how best to respond to concerns of child sexual abuse. They follow on from the previous ones, which have described what we know about the current scale and nature of child sexual abuse in England and Wales, understanding the signs and indicators of abuse, and building a picture of your concerns. Let's begin with a case study of Alice, although that's not her real name. A quote from Alice is shown on the screen here. Alice was sexually abused by her paternal uncle from the ages of about 3 to 10. At age 12, someone else in the family disclosed sexual abuse by the same man. Alice's mother asked her if she'd been sexually abused, and she said yes. And that was it. She was made safe, but no one ever spoke to her about it. No one told her it wasn't her fault or her responsibility. No one talked to her about why people abuse children. And no one helped her understand that the symptoms she was experiencing were as a result of her abuse. Alice started running into difficulties at school. They knew she'd been sexually abused, but didn't want to ask about it. Instead, they referred her to child and adolescent mental health services. Then later, she accessed adult mental health and substance misuse services. They all focused on the immediate presenting issues she was facing, but never asked the question about what had caused these difficulties in the first place. Later, during a session with a therapist, she was finally asked the question. So there were 30 years of opportunities when any of us, as professionals, could have spoken to Alice, as a child, a young person, and adult, about what had happened to her. To say to Alice it wasn't your fault, to talk about her feelings of confusion, self-blame, and feelings of responsibility. Secrecy and silence are the best friends of sexual abuse. In fact, it needs them in order to thrive, and those who abuse depend on us to maintain it. If we don't work to break this silence, then we are colluding with the silence that surrounds it. Instead, if we start naming it and talking about it, we will get on top of it, and more children will be protected and supported. So, when and why might a child disclose sexual abuse? In some situations, a child's disclosure might appear spontaneous. It might be triggered by a school lesson, TV programme, or an escalation of the abuse. In other situations, a child might tell about the abuse accidentally. It may be a secret they cannot contain any longer. Or it may be that they believe other children, such as their siblings, are at risk of abuse. Alternatively, a child may only begin talking about sexual abuse when prompted, for example during a medical examination, a child protection inquiry, an assessment of their needs, or a therapeutic session. It might be when a teacher or health professional notices something may be wrong and asks about it. Their disclosure may be vague, they may have problems with recalling their experience, or may not have the language to talk about it. It's suggested that the majority of children who have experienced abuse will try to communicate it to someone in some way. For younger children, this is most likely to be a parent or family member, while adolescents are more likely to confide in a friend or a peer. Both research and practice show that it can take years for a child to get to the point where they feel able to tell someone. Sadly, we know the younger the child is when the abuse starts, the longer it can take for it to be uncovered. Even when children do communicate their abuse to someone, it's often misunderstood or minimised. A significant number of young people have a negative experience of telling someone about their abuse, and we can and must change this. As professionals working together, we know we can tackle this. In our next video, we look at recognising and trying to remove the barriers to conversations about sexual abuse.